So, Patrick, you have been an old soul in many ways since I've known you. I mean, a decade we've been able to know each other, live life very close together. But this whole home ownership over the last couple of years, it seems to have changed you into even more of an old man. Tell us a little bit about this experience.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate that you're only talking to me and that my wonderful wife, Ellis, is not here with me because
Hey, we can get her on.
yeah, it'll turn into Comedy Central's version of the roast, but never before in my life have I driven past yards and been like, man, that's some really good looking grass. And now, we're having a conversation and I'm like staring out the back window being like, man, if I could get some like grass there, like maybe I could put a little chipping area over the
course.
pool. Or I look at my neighbor's yard and I'm like, how is it so green? So lawn envy just quickly became a thing. And it was not on my bingo card for, year one of home ownership, but here we are.
Here we are. And I'm sure Ellis really appreciates you gazing off into the lawn as she's talking to you about something probably a little more serious than the lawn.
Yes. I wish I could say it's only when we're talking about what we're going to have for dinner, but that would just flat out be not true.
Well, knowing your wonderful father, I'm sure he's very proud because you are becoming just like your dad. And I think that is a wonderful thing, buddy.
Get me whatever it is, that State Farm commercial. Get me a sponsorship because I'm living it out and I'm not getting any ad dollars for that.
Let's be honest. Life's messy. Decisions are complex. And it's not all black and white. But these are the decisions that shape our growth. Welcome to The Tension. Let's get into it. All right, welcome to The Tension. As always, we've got a great one today. Today we have Patrick Mundlin, the Vice President of Atlanta. He started the office for 49 Financial. He now moved back to Texas, South Lake, Texas, and is doing amazing things at the company. Patrick, thanks for being on, buddy.
Well, Travis, longtime listener, first-time caller. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, buddy. Well, listen, this is going to be an epic one. And I know I say this every time, but this one I'm so excited by because this is the tension of who you're becoming. Talk about one that we are all constantly, I don't care what our age is and listening to this, we're always becoming something, good, bad, indifference. We're always becoming something. But I want to kick it off with just a simple question of, tensions are not problems to solve, right? There are things to manage. And there's this idea of who we're becoming is this mixture of kind of three things happening at once. There's who we were. We all have this memory of our past. Who we are, we kind of are aware of that. And then we know where we're going, who we're becoming, what we want to be, all these things. And I think it's all three of those combined together of who we're becoming. And specifically, we were talking about this podcast, we were just talking about life, and you mentioned just the season that you're in and how this is such a tension for you. You mind giving us a little bit more of just the season you feel like you're in and why this is such a difficult tension for all of us to manage?
Yes, absolutely. I think there's a couple dynamics. One, I think life is just made up of different seasons. We have scripture to look at that for a guide, but then you can look back on your own life and you have these chapters, these seasons. It's most notably with school, right? You have elementary school, then middle school, and so on. But after life, you have seasons. And the one guarantee you have in every season is that change will be constant. And so for my life, for my family, you said it, I lived in Atlanta for a 3.5-year window, moved there during COVID, didn't know anyone when I moved there. I actually met the people I lived with when I first moved, when I parked the U-Haul in the driveway. So a little bit of stranger danger in that scenario, but they were great. And it helped me get my feet under me, but moved back to Texas to be closer to family, to be strategically closer to clients because those relationships are important to me. And then a lot of newness happened at once. So my fiance, now wife, moved from Atlanta. We bought a house together. We got married. She got a new job. And then there's been some other challenging items going on in life. Travis, you know this because of our friendship, but my father and some of the health issues there. You have all of these different dynamics, and they're all really good in their own way, but they're all really hard in their own way. And so you're constantly changing and figuring out what this next season is going to hold for who you are, but also who you want to be.
Yeah, so good. Yeah, even hearing all of those things, Patrick, it's so funny to think about your story because I vividly remember when you and I were talking about this whole you're moving to Atlanta, and this is so your style. But I don't think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Had you not been there, or maybe been there once before you made the call?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that when you said I want you to move to Atlanta, I was like, you're not talking Atlanta, Texas. I didn't think at the
Wait,
time that
is there
existed.
an Atlanta, Texas?
I think there is. I think
Okay.
someone has since told me that there is, but you were talking about Atlanta, Georgia, and I was just, not interested.
Yes.
I think I'd been on one layover in that airport, and even that, I could be making it up, but never really spent any time in the city, and went out there with someone who knew the city, someone who worked at 49, a close mentor, Hunter Lloyd. And ironically, the weather was pretty horrible. I did get hoodwinked. Everyone was like, no, man, like the weather's really bad. It's not like this. It was like December, and it's always rainy and overcast in Atlanta in December.
Okay.
But yeah, the weather wasn't particularly good. We ate at a couple neat restaurants, and I was like, it's kind of like Dallas in the woods. And that was the extent. That was the extent of the research that went into moving. A lot of the actual decision-making process that went into the moving was talking to mentors, talking to people whose guidance I valued, talking to family and praying over it.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember, but we're going to go back there. We're going to go back to that 2020 when you moved. But, before we do, as we think about this tension, right, of who you're becoming and these phases, right, I vividly remember in 2022, you wrote a reflection, and we talk about reflections all the time, right? Weekly, we want to do reflections, yearly, all these things. But I mean, this was kind of a life reflection for you. You'd been a couple years into the Atlanta journey. Talk about this idea of like really wrestling with who you were becoming, faced with a lot of challenges. But can you just tell me, like, why did you decide to write that? Because I think out of the gate here, we might have a great practical tip for everybody of, you want to know who you're becoming, you might have to spend the time to write that out. Like, talk to us about why'd you write it? What did you write about? How did it help you on this journey of self-awareness?
I think part of it's just, I'm a little bit of a sicko, Travis, to where I look at parts of my life and I analyze, okay, how can I do it better?
I don't know that that's a sicko. That sounds reasonable.
Maybe so. I think in some avenues it's a little obsessive.
If done too much, sure.
If done too much, yeah. But I was talking to all these people who I respected in their faith or in business or in life and the way they kept up with friendships. And one of the common themes was that every one of these individuals journaled, and they journaled consistently.
Yeah.
And as I was looking at my own habits and practice, I had journaled fairly consistently since college. And Travis, you want to know how many times I've gone back and looked at those journal notes?
I would love to know.
Not once.
Okay.
I
gotta say, it's either a lot or a little.
Yeah. I've got all the journals, and they're in order on my bookshelf by year, but I've just never gone back and looked at them. And so I just realized it's kind of like going to the gym and, waving at the front desk person and grabbing some water and chatting it up with people. And you spend an hour there, but you don't do anything.
Like, is this from personal experience?
This is not from personal experience. This is.
It sounded like a pretty vivid story.
It's why the podcast is shoulder up. All right. So there's no body shaming. But it's like, what's the point of going and doing that if you're not going to exercise? And so I realized, what's the point of journaling if I'm never going to actually reflect on it?
Yeah, it's good.
And so I decided to change the medium in which I journaled, and it started with a email. And so when I decided to move to Atlanta in 2020, one of the things I did was I created a group text, and it was really the group text was called Patlanta. We'll play on words there.
Creative. Come on now.
It was the guys that at that phase in my life that I said, okay, if I'm going to get married, are you at a table at my reception, or are you standing by my side at the ceremony?
Yeah.
And that's one of the litmus tests I use for friendships. And just because you're in one camp or the other doesn't mean anything. It just recognizes where energy and effort gets put. And so this Patlanta group text was created, and I was able to share micro highs and micro lows. And come 2022, I realized through a lot of things, counseling, taking time to reflect and journaling and talking with mentors, that a lot of growth had happened, and that I would say all of these micro learnings kind of clicked. It's like you had this aha moment where you could look back and see, oh, that's what's been done. If you want to take it to scripture, it's like looking at the red lining of the Old Testament and all of these foreshadowings of the Lamb of God coming for us. And you're like, oh, that's how this was all woven together. And not that my life is anywhere near Christ, but I had this aha moment on why I am the way I am, why I'm bent towards certain things, why I think the way I do. And you're forced to reconcile in that moment hurts and pains from the past that maybe you held on to way too long. You know, one of the men I admire the most says, you don't take the measure of a man when they're still a boy. And I think I took the measure of people when they were still just children and assumed that that's who they were. Wow. And I let actions justify my own self-worth, right or wrong. Like there's no reason we need to be crappy to ourselves. There's plenty of people who will do that for us. And so my eyes just, you know what, in 2022, I was 28 and 27, 28. And so my eyes just started to open to this. And as I was writing it, the email medium was a way to keep that Patlanta crew in the know without calling and having 2-hour long conversations or sending a novel and a text message. And what's funny is, as I was talking to other friends and they were asking how things were going or what I was learning, I'd start talking about it. And I'd reference this email and they say, can you send that to me? And so I just had this mindset that was like, yeah, I'll share it openly. And you know what, if you know someone that's going through anything similar, feel free to share it with them. And the responses were overall fairly positive in 2022. And so I've kept that train going.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so much in there, Patrick. So, I mean, I think if you're a listener out there, this is a man that I admire, his self-reflectiveness and his ability, like you said, to go to maybe the painful parts to try to really figure out who he's becoming. He's done it. I mean, that's why this topic is perfect for him to say. But, you know, Patrick, as I'm listening to you, I mean, it sounds like while this is kind of like it really isn't for a lot of us, because how often do we, I mean, I'm sitting over here just kind of making mental notes myself. Like how often am I journaling in this stage of life with 3 daughters and all this stuff going on and everything happening? Like not as often. Right. And I blame it on busyness. But then even when I'm doing it, I love what you said. Like it's the fact that you a couple years later went back to all those different journal entries and you had them via accountability with some people that you trusted, some friends. And that led to a little bit more of this culmination of being able to trace back your story. And so I think just off the jump here, that right there is maybe the biggest thing any of us can do if we want to know, like, how do we deal with this tension of who we're becoming? Because it really is an awkward, every day is just, I don't know, there's highs, lows, all of that. But I mean, any other practicals from just what you said that you want to make sure anyone takes away as to how you've gotten where you are on this journey?
Yes. I think the one thing I would add is just, I didn't do it alone.
There it is. Yes.
And so I went to counseling, right? I think, there's older generations who look on counseling as that means like there's some serious mental health issues. And I look at counseling as no different than being like, did you ever have a private trainer for basketball or football or golf growing up? Okay, they're a private trainer for your mind.
Dude, that is gold.
For your soul. And
that's
so
good,
just
man.
Like people go to private coaches for a sport and people go to business coaches for business, I'm going to go to counseling for my mind and for my soul. And so counseling helped just in massive ways, not necessarily that they said something that was so profound, but that they asked questions and created a space for me to process and get out of my own echo chamber. And then they provided resources that they were like, hey, I think if you could read this, like, man, it's going to change the way you look at things, right? One of those books that I still remember was called Perfect Sinners. And it was just like mind-blowingly simple, yet shook me to my core on a lot of these false beliefs I had. And so number one was I didn't do it alone. And then Travis, you talked about accountability. I intentionally had to seek out individuals that wanted to, we termed it flipping rocks, and flipping the rocks of our life and saying, hey, I wonder what's under there.
Yeah.
And coming in with this mindset that says, I'm just as broken, I'm just as damaged, I'm just as harmed as the next person, but I'm not here to point at you and be like, man, look how messed up you are. I'm here to try to grow myself and encourage you in that same journey. And so I think one of the things that was so special in that was having a place and a person to process with consistently. And then the culmination all came together at the very end.
Yeah, but I think that's so good, man, of like, I know for me, as every year has gone on, and it's not like either one of us are like old sages that have all this wisdom. But I mean, now that we've lived a little bit, like, I think the very friends that I wanted maybe in a college setting are like the exact opposite friends every year I live in adulthood that I actually want. Because, you know, that friend that, to your point, will flip over the rocks, right? The friend that will ask you the question, you're like, I get really defensive every time I'm around you. Then I have to mind my emotions and say, I asked for this. This is what we are literally doing. Let's do it. Like, you start to admire that more and seek that out more. But doggone it, man. I mean, that's not the friendships I was looking for. Like, how do you overcome that? And I do want to go back to 2020, but real quick, like, how did you overcome this? You know, you love hanging out. Like, you're a wonderful person who just like, if you invite Pat or something, it's going to be a better party. That's for sure. But like, how did you switch from that? And of course, you still can have that friend to like really being and then asking for that type of friend as the years have gone on.
I think I've had this type of relationship a few different times in my life, different people. What's interesting as I reflect on all of those relationships is I wouldn't say that we started out as the best of friends. We started out with incredibly overlapping interests and commonality and desires, not necessarily the exact same personalities, but one of the things that was common was there was a desire for growth and an understanding that it was going to be hard. And it started there. What grew out of it was the friendship. And I think shared experiences, or one of the reasons like teammates are so close is because they share pain, right? You can probably still remember that one basketball workout where you were like, if I have to run one more sprint, I might not make it out of this gym. But you remember who was next to you on the line, the person that was pushing you, the person that you were pulling. And so that shared experience of pain or trial draws you close. And so when I look at these people, three people that come to mind, it was we had this commonality, but we were drawn to this iron sharpening iron mentality and understanding, okay, we can flip rocks and know that it's not personal. When they ask that question, it's not to knock me down. It's actually to help build me up.
Dude,
that takes
so good.
It takes a level of trust. It takes a level of vulnerability on both parties, but it never started out as the friendship. And I think it could start out as the friendship over time, but I think it's a little bit harder because now you're like, hey, I already really like this person.
Yeah.
So now when they say this other thing, how am I going to respond, or how are they going to respond? Well, when you start out with that as the goal, that was your baseline to begin with. Then the friendship is just like the cherry on top, right? I want the sundae. I'm not coming for the toppings.
Man, I love that. And I think that, you know, because there's two things you've already said, that this idea of like, it is a tension of who you're becoming, because we all just want to be the best version of that thing in our head and we want it to happen tomorrow, but there's so much work that has to be done. And you're right. There's like the introspection, the journaling and all of that. But dang, like if you don't have people pointing out the blind spots, if you don't have people who see their job in your life, frankly, is like, I've got to help Pat Lano over here. Funny name, by the way. I've got to help him. Like I got to show him his blind spots. I've got to push him for growth. I've got to do these things. And then I think what you said is really, really great, that like sometimes when we just have mentors and we don't have friends, and I'm a big mentor guy, but this whole Paul, Barnabas, and Timothy, you need someone above you, someone going the race beside you, and you need to be pouring to someone below you. I think a lot of times as the years progress in adulthood, you actually miss out on the middle one, which is that encourager, that person going at the same way. At least that's been my experience, because you want the mentor, and then you're in mentor settings with mentees, but like, hey, person, I'm going to give you some thoughts, and then I know what it feels like, so then you give me some. I don't know. I just think there's gold in that. I could go on and on, but I want to go back to 2020, Pat. So 2020, you make this move. And sure, like you already had learned a lot about yourself. I mean, I remember having discussions with you even before then of just things you even learned from like high school, things you learned from middle school and college, and just amazing learnings on this, path to who you're becoming. But 2020 was a significant moment for you. Yes, we joked about like how you made the decision, but you did make it prayerfully. You did make it with a lot of other people, and it was a time in which we really wanted to expand. And so it was a great compliment to you from a company perspective that you were one of the few to tap on the shoulder, say, like, go open up the entirety of the East Coast. I mean, big moment, right? But like, take us back to this whole idea of like on the journey and this path of managing the tension of who we're becoming. We're going to have some times where doubts, insecurities, these things pop in. And I have to imagine some of which you've told me, some maybe you haven't, that in 2020, going out there and then you get your first week under your belt and maybe you have all these people starting for you in a city you don't even know, like there had to have been a little bit of insecurity there. Like walk us through how that felt.
If you've ever heard the phrase fake it till you make it, I felt like that was my first 18 months in Atlanta. And some of it, at the time we were just coming off our move to independence. And so I had a mentor who told me to invest in staff that's investing in my business and scaling very early. And so there were things that I was getting asked questions on when we first opened Atlanta, like a month in. Hey, how do I do this paperwork application for a client that said yes so I can hit this major milestone? And my answer would be like, hey, I think that's something you should figure out. And it wasn't because I didn't want to help them. It's because I didn't know. Because I had staff that had done paperwork for me for the past 3 years and I'd never done it in this new system. If you hear that and laugh, you should probably not copy that. You probably need to know how to do those little things.
Word to the wise.
Yeah, word to the wise. It's funny, but not the best leadership to just say, hey, I think you should figure that out. And so there was a lot of those fake it till you make it moments, but there was almost some the only way I know how to explain it is like if you've ever been snow skiing and you start on the bunny slope and you're like, okay, I can do this. And then you start on a blue and you're like, okay, I can do this. And then you go up to that like really big blue or like a blue black and you start going down the mountain and then you realize you're going way faster than you ever wanted to go.
Yeah.
And you haven't fallen yet, but in the back of your mind, you're like, uh-oh, this isn't good. And it's this adrenaline rush, and it's the thing that makes you want to do it again.
Yeah, totally.
But it's also that terrifying feeling. And so I think part of that imposter syndrome came in Atlanta because we opened this office. We're very fortunate to have a lot of success very quickly. And what happened there was we very quickly eclipsed my greatest results ever back in Austin. And so on the one hand, you had all of this success, but on the other hand, I felt like it was just, like a flash of lightning or that quick fire in a pan, whatever that phrase is. But
flash in a pan.
Yeah. And so I was like, there's no way this is real. And that was something I was constantly wrestling with, was this imposter syndrome identity crisis. And so it was really interesting because on paper, I remember if you looked at gosh, I think it was the end of 2020. It might have been like the end of 2021, but I think it was the end of 2020. We set these metrics that were like, this is how we're going to measure the office from success, which what a joke. We didn't know what we were doing. We were like, this sounds good. And I think we hit the majority of those metrics. And at the end of 2021, I know we were there, but it was still not an appropriate measuring stick. And so it's like, okay, I've done this, but it doesn't really feel successful. It doesn't really feel like I've accomplished anything. Number one. And number two, in that season, I think I was learning, and this is a lot of that reflection that you and I talked about, but learning that it wasn't just about going where I felt like I was called. It was learning to go where I was called cheerfully and with a joyful heart. Because we looked up at the end of 2021 and the results were pretty good.
Yeah.
They weren't perfect.
But company leading.
Yeah, it was company leading, right? End of 2022, it was top office in the company. But at the end of 2021, it was the moment where like the Israelites are in the desert and they're like, hey, we'll give you the promised land.
Yes.
But the Spirit, the Lord will not be with you. And they're like, nope, I'm out. And it was like I had all of the things that I think people around me would be like, must be nice. Or the results that looked really good. But I got so focused on hitting these results so I could come home because I didn't have a joyful heart, because I didn't have an obedient mindset, that I got everything that I wanted and none of it was fulfilling. And so that further compounded a little bit of imposter syndrome of like, this doesn't make any sense. Like, I thought this thing was going to check my box and it doesn't. And that's candidly what kicked off this, I'm going to call it another 18-month journey of introspection and flipping rocks that led to that reflection in 2022 that led to the next one in 2024.
Yeah. Well, and gosh, I remember it. And I think one of the things that both of us would probably go back, I can definitely say I'd put this more on me than you, is when you're chasing something big and you put a finish line out there, especially for a winner like you, that will then get so almost obsessive, like you used that term before, right? Of just like, I'm going to go get it done. And then maybe you do get it done. Right. And I mean, financially, you were crazy above and beyond what maybe you ever dreamed possible by that age. I mean, more than what most will make in their entire, like careers. I mean, you're doing it just like a 3-year period. And it was awesome. But I love what you have to say of like, wait a second. So like you did end up getting to the spot where it was successful. A lot of failures, a lot of things that, boy, I even know what you're talking about of like, it just got a little too big too fast. So boy, that's a different podcast we can talk about of just like, just some of the lessons. And God, there's such a thing as too fast of growth, everyone out there, that is actually not healthy. But we were just so hungry and all those types of things. And so boy, during all of that, you were having one side of the coin with great successes and the other wasn't following, which was way more important to you. Yeah. How did it feel? How did you find self-awareness? How'd you go through the hard moments that you could feel something's off and yet still like keep going and still keep searching? Because I think that's one thing I want you to really hit on here is like, I admire you because when people feel like something's off, number one, or number two, when they feel like they're actually having worldly success, everyone else is like happy for them. Let alone having both of those, most would just kind of continue on, shove down feelings and just be like, great, I guess this is just how you live. And I wonder how many successful people have done that, but you didn't. How? Why?
I wish I could say I did it. I think I did shove it down for 18 months and then it overflowed the box, right? Like the capacity for continuing to suppress those feelings, just it wasn't there and it overflowed the box. So I think part of it is the pursuit of learning, the pursuit of excellence. I kind of have this mindset that's like, if I'm going to do something, I'm going to be proud to put my name on it when it's done. Man, I can remember good friends of mine at Texas A&M running for student body president, and they asked me if I would hold signs on campus, which if you know no clue about the A&M culture, and take culture, think cult, it's there. It's a huge deal to become student body president. And I told them effectively no. I was like, look, I'll hold your sign, but what you want is someone who's going to campaign and endorse you and support you. So if you just need someone to hold it, to keep it from falling over, I'm your guy. But if you're wanting someone to yell your slogan and hand out stickers and like be a massive advocate, it's not going to be me. And it's not because I don't support you. I'm just not like passionate about that.
Yeah.
Like I want to see you win, but not enough to, give my time in this way. And so that I think stung for them to hear, but they're like, I kind of appreciate the honesty, right? Like, it's better to have the right person there, or maybe someone who's 80% as talented, but 100% bought in is going to do better than the 100% talented, but 80% bought in individual.
Good,
so
man.
That reflection of like, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it right, just was happening in all kind of aspects of life. And so I think it was like the spiritual, my jeans don't fit anymore moment. And so if Travis, I know you know this, you've worn suits. Jeans actually is a bad example, but suit pants.
I was about to say you can get some stretch in the jeans.
Yeah, the Thanksgiving jeans is what those are called. But suit pants, they do not stretch. And if you gain some LBs, they're gonna be really honest with you. And so I think it was the moment of like putting on the suit pants from college and being like, oh, these don't really fit anymore. And so it just kind of like hit me like a 1-ton, brick falling on you. And it's like, you can't really ignore it. It wasn't this slow
So that was the
erosion.
moment. It just kind of, just hit. You felt like you did kind of compress for 18 months, kind of push it down that like, well, maybe I am having success. Maybe I just need to feel better. Maybe if I get to this next milestone, or maybe hire this other person, or whatever it may be. And then it didn't go away enough to where like, was there a moment like where you just like out on a walk where you eat and did it? Like, do you remember the moment where you're like, ooh, this is hitting me, that 1-ton brick?
Oh yeah, I do. Bless her, Blythe, my sister-in-law, we were at the ranch, and I don't remember the question that she asked specifically. But it reminded me of a question that I was asked when I first moved to Atlanta, and I'll tie these two together for you. But we're at the ranch on the back porch, which is like my family's safe haven, right? It's where we love to go and relax and read books and spend time in the outdoors. And she asked this question, and I can't take credit for the giving the example of the Israelites in the wilderness, because I had heard it in a sermon a couple of months prior. And when she asked the question, that was the light bulb moment for me. And it kind of clicked. But what it also clicked to was when I first moved to Atlanta, I didn't really know anyone. Funny enough, life goes on. I realized that I was going to church with 4 or 5 guys who slept on my couch during the Auburn A&M game because they knew my roommate through Kanakuk. No one introduced me. We had a good laugh about it, but I didn't know anyone, and I got plugged into this small group through church. And that individual he was so welcoming. He invited me over for dinner with him and a couple other people. And it was actually his girlfriend who asked me. She was like, look, it's obvious that you're talented, that you're driven, that you're very hungry, that you are here on a mission. But if you look up in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, and this office has nothing to show for itself, but you leave incredibly sanctified, was it worth it?
Come on.
It was this reckoning of, do I believe what I say I believe? Do I follow what I say I follow? Do I really prioritize the things that I say I prioritize? Or is that for everyone else and this is for me? And I remember my gut reaction was, hell no, it's not okay. like if we're talking about this Lord who could raise Jesus from the dead, raise Lazarus from the dead, right? He can sanctify me in Austin, Texas, in Dallas, Texas. He does not have to send me to Atlanta. And, but I knew that was the wrong answer, right? And I talked earlier about having a joyful heart and an obedient heart. It was my Jonah moment. Like forever, I thought it was, Jonah got swallowed by a whale because he disobeyed. And the disobedience was a part of it, but it was really the attitude of his heart, because even after he went to Nineveh and he was up on the hill, he was still angry and bitter that the Lord was showing grace.
Yeah.
And that's not the heart that the Lord wants for the people he calls. And so it was that question of sanctification where my gut reaction made me want to puke. And then the other question that I wish I could remember it, that my sister-in-law asked, that those two things together tied in. And it was like, okay, you've tried to do this your way with zero sanctification and all the results in the world.
Yeah.
And it's really unappealing. And so we flipped it. And by no means were we perfect. Like, there was a lot of growth, and there was a lot of people in the Atlanta office in 2021 and 2022 that I'm sure they wish, why could I not have worked with this Patrick? Right? Why did I get the sucky one that was flipping rocks?
Dude,
those people,
I think about that all the time. Like, if you could just go back. Sorry, to those people, you were going to say.
I was just going to say to those people, I'm sorry. I wish that you could have this person, because like I think my joy is different. My energy is different. My enthusiasm is different.
But one thing, Patrick, I mean, because we may have some of them listening, like, those are amazing people. And obviously I'm sure they would wish that, and that's great. Anyone would wish to be around the best version of somebody else. It's just an amazing thing to experience. And man, things happen for a reason. And so sure. I think where I would just encourage you is, like, you did everything you possibly could. I mean, I watched you work 80-hour weeks. I watched you think and pray and reflect and do all these things to make everyone around you better. And yeah, maybe it didn't work out for everyone, and maybe there's things you wish you could have changed and all that type of stuff, but it could have been exactly right for their journey. Yeah. And I think for me, I think that's what I've learned. And like this whole idea of like who we're becoming, I think one of the things that we do have to look in the mirror on is that because we aren't who we hopefully are, hopefully we're getting better every day, because we aren't that person in our past, we have to have a kind of a self-forgiveness and still learn the lessons. We have to then apologize where we need to apologize. My goodness, for sure. But then I think there's this third one. I knew those two. But then there's this third one of, if we're going to deal with the tension of who we're becoming, we also have to be okay that all of that might have actually happened for a reason for all parties involved. For sure. Like, talk to me. Like, do you feel like you kind of, as you look back, have learned that from those times? I mean, because you're just mentioning kind of talking to those people. I'm just curious to see in this road to who you're becoming, how you view of like that version of yourself to those people.
I mean, I think, gosh, it's a really tricky question to answer. So I think back on my story and a lot of the things, Travis, that you know and that I talk about in that email, that for years I harbored anger or hurt or bitterness. And it was like, gosh, you know, Travis, you love the game of golf, and you know I do, but let's just pretend for a second that I didn't. Just because I don't love the game of golf doesn't devalue the game. And so just because you're really good friends with person A and I'm not, doesn't make person A any less valuable. It's like, dude, Ellis will only eat green mint chocolate chip ice cream. It all tastes the same to me, but it doesn't make regular mint chocolate chip ice cream any less valuable, right? Yeah. Or like, I love cookie two-step. Okay, and so like, I think one of the things I reconcile with, or I had to look at, was just because I necessarily didn't get treated the way I wanted to get treated doesn't devalue who I am. It just means that people failed to see value that was there, or like, man, maybe there was a little bit of immaturity there in those times. And so if all of those things made me who I am today, if I could wave a magic wand and get rid of them, would it have been like an easier, more peaceful journey? Yes. Yeah. But I'm not going to sit here and spend my time wasting over, I wish that didn't happen, because I don't know who I would have become, and I might not have liked that person. Right. I don't think my journey's done today. I'm not saying I'm sitting here and saying like I'm perfect. Like, I got a lot of work to do, right? Again, I'll put it in here like I put it at the beginning. Get Ellis on here, and it's like Comedy Central Roast Fest. Sure. So there's work to be done. But I'm the person I am because of who those people were. And so I think that's where you reconcile and you find forgiveness. And Travis, I think the reality of the matter is, if I sat down with a lot of those people and I said, hey, when you did this and this and this, they'd be like, I don't remember that ever happening. Dude, yes. I am so sorry. Right. And I guarantee you there are people that could do that with me. Yeah. And so I'm not going to be the first one to put them on trial, because let me tell you, there's probably plenty of people who could put me on trial. So a long-winded way of answering your question of, at the end of the day, I am who I am because of those people. And I hope the people that we were talking to earlier would look back and say, man, I wish that 9 things there could have gone different. But there's this one thing that maybe, while painful, I took away from it. Right? Yeah. It's like we would all like to, be super, fit and in shape and muscular or whatever without going to the gym. Yeah. But part of getting there is that your muscles are going to hurt.
Yeah.
And so I think that's my hope, because that's the way I look at it. But again, just because they look at it differently doesn't mean their view is any less valuable.
No doubt. No doubt. So, well, and I think there's so much good there. And obviously, as leaders, like, we have a higher degree of responsibility we're held to in all facets, right? But I think what you're saying is there's a benefit of the doubt. Yes. That when we think about this tension of who you're becoming, part of it truly is you have to give the benefit of the doubt to others. But then I think, you have to give that to yourself, Well,
I don't terribly want to cut you off, but you talked about it earlier. I think one of the hardest things for me has been showing myself grace.
Yeah.
And
I would agree. Watching you for a decade, I agree with that statement.
It's been so difficult because you're an athlete, you're a competitor, and in sports, when I would finish a game, I didn't think about any of the thing that went right, because I was like, it was supposed to go right. That's why I practiced. Totally. I only thought about the things I did incorrectly or I did poorly. And honestly, I've ruined some moments in that season to, celebrate a really good game with my parents or celebrate with teammates, because I was so consumed with where I could have done that one thing better. And I missed some really special moments along the way. And there were points of conflict there that I created. But I think learning to show yourself grace is a muscle that is beneficial. And I can say in this season, Trav, Ellis and I talk, and there will be times where we miscommunicate. And it's so rare. It's one of the things I'm so grateful for, is we over communicate. It's so rare that it feels tense. And we find ourselves reminding each other, hey, if our marriage was a human being, we're a little over a year old. We can't even walk yet. We're crawling.
That's good.
Right? Let's give ourselves a little bit of grace, because our relationship's still wearing diapers. And so that muscle that you might apply individually is going to help you in so many other facets of life.
Well, and I think this idea of, and I thank you for being so vulnerable, like showing yourself grace. I don't think, especially 3s out there on the Enneagram, if you know what that is, that's these kind of achieving type people, like what's the next hill? We're going to go climb it type folks. I'm that way too, Patrick, as you know. And I think it is incredibly difficult, maybe extra so for that personality type. Yeah. But I love what you said there, because I also think that, like, the art of giving yourself grace, like, how can you actually become what you want to become if you just sit there in a bunch of regret? If you just sit there and like, gosh, if I could have done this different in high school, if I could have done this different in this leadership position, if I could have done that, or whatever it may be. But also, can you talk about the other end? Like, you had to forgive yourself. Like, how did you, if you do look at, because I think there is a part of this tension of who you're becoming, as you do have to mend old relationships. So I don't know if there's like a personal or professional example of this, but like giving grace to yourself is a big piece of it. Like, how did you, when you felt like, man, as I look back, I didn't do right. Maybe there were things that I wish I was more mature, even if I did try my hardest. Like, how did you do that to then, almost, I don't know, put some type of milestone down in just how you thought about, this is how I treat people when I'm wrong? Because I think that's a part of who you're becoming as well.
Yeah, I think there's a couple dynamics to it. There's almost this, if you go and like say, hey, I forgive you to someone, and they're like, what are you talking about? And you're like, this thing 10 years ago. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
That might not go over so well. Right.
I would imagine not.
And so I think like there's a category that's like, okay, blank slate. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to be like overly extending of my friendship and my time and my trust, but it doesn't mean I'm going to hold ill will
Yeah.
Exactly. And Travis, let me tell you, there's been people that I think I wrote off early in life that I've seen later in life, and they've said, "Hey, let's go to lunch." And after lunch with them, I'm like, "You aren't the same person."
Dude, that's so good.
And I
Yeah.
leave that lunch
And neither are
hoping,
you.
yeah, and I hope they say the same thing about me. And so I think you have that camp and category of people. Something that I don't do a good job of, my brother does an incredible job of, and I'm trying to grow in, is like even after I sent that email, he came to me and he was like,
Wow.
"Hey, as I just read that, if there's anything I've ever done, anything I've ever said, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, there was nothing in there directed at you. I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. But this oversensitivity almost to, and I say oversensitivity because to me, that's what it has to feel like. If I'm being overly sensitive, I'm probably operating on a pretty healthy basis of the people around me and how my actions impact them. And then I think the last one is learning to be a peacemaker and learning to pursue harmony and understanding there are times where you might have the right answer or you feel like your way is better, but the pursuit of peace or the pursuit of harmony and continuity is more important than efficiency or the end result or the end product.
Yeah.
And so being very quick to just say, "Hey, I'm sorry." And one of the things I found is like, if you're very quick to apologize, typically the first words out of the other person's mouth is like, "Are you kidding me? No, I'm sorry."
Yeah.
Right. It's almost like
Yeah.
fight to apologize. And you realize typically the thing that you were irked over probably wasn't worth being irked over to begin with.
Yeah.
Someone might have tripped on your pride shoelace and you were like, have you seen these Jordans? Right.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Well, I think it's so good. I mean, I love where we started the discussion around just the self-reflection and journaling and then moving to these relationships. And I think, yeah, we've talked in so many different ways of how, who you're becoming is these relationships. One thing I thought that was interesting in just thinking about your journey is this idea that you've admitted, and these are really the words you've shared that I'd like you to unpack more, is like, you had to switch from viewing, whether it was in business or in just personal life, certain relationships and friendships and maybe employee employer, whatever it is, as transactional to a much deeper, more beautiful thing. And that was a big takeaway of like becoming a lot of the man I see today. Like, talk to us about that change, because I know the word transactional, first define that for everyone just so they know what you meant by that. So I think that's important. But then, like, how did you notice it? Like, how did you take something that's so big and like look it in the face and then change so radically?
Yeah, I think if we're going to define transactional, it is I do A and I get B, or you give B and I provide A, right? It's very like marketplace economies. I think, go figure, this goes into a little bit of self-reflection. When I was at A&M, I had 3 different people be like, "When I first met you, I hated your guts." And I was like, "Sheesh, man, what a way to start a compliment." There might have been some profanity in some of those, Trav. And then they finished it with like, "But as I got to know you, I began to realize who you were." And part of it was really unhealthy in that season. It was, "This is who I am, and if you don't like it, you can kick rocks."
Yeah.
And that level
like
of
a defensive mechanism type
a defensive mechanism, right? That level of identity was something I don't think people were used to, but it was an overreaction and a defensiveness because of the season before. And so it took them a while to warm up. And so part of it was the reflection of, why did those people say that? Because these are some of my closest friends today. These are men in my wedding. So that kind of sits in the back of your mind, and you massage on it from time to time to work that problem out. Part 2, I would say, is having conversations with mentors. I remember conversations you and I had together where I said, "Hey, I feel like I am at this glass ceiling and I don't know what the difference is." And it was reconciling that with counseling. It was reconciling that with a business coach. It was reconciling that with you. And it was essentially saying, I am going to get over old hurts of the past and stop looking at people saying, "At any moment you could hurt me," because that's what happened 20 years ago or 10 years ago, however long it was. And I was still assuming that 20, 21, 25-year-olds, we're going to act the same way as people years and years, earlier, with a different level of maturity and knowledge and worldview. And so I think part of it was almost just like, hey, you got to grow up yourself if you expect people to grow up around you. And then
what a quote that is.
The last one is just like, you have to be okay with being hurt. And that one, I think, comes to, like, man, talk about the gospel views, right? Like,
Yeah.
Of all the people that Jesus could have said, no, I'm not going to spend time around you, there was Judas, and he did.
Yeah.
And he knew, right? He had foreknowledge of what was about to happen.
No
and
doubt.
So if we are called to live in that manner, then that means I'm called to live every aspect in my life like Christ lived. And that means inviting people in. And yes, like, right, we want to be shrewd as a serpent and innocent as a dove in our actions and in our business and in our relationships. But that means opening the door to people that you're going to love on, that might at any point in time say, you've given me what I need, see you later.
Yeah. Brother, I'm so glad you went there. I mean, that's one of the things that I not only admire about you, but just this idea of, like, if you really want to start becoming like, like who you're really proud of. God, that quote of, like, don't be afraid to get hurt, but also you can't judge others by old school methodologies of pain that you had before. And gosh, if you want them to grow up, grow yourself up first, and maybe they'll match you.
Yeah.
And if you grow yourself up and they don't, then maybe it's a relationship that came to a seasonal end, and that's okay too. But so, Patrick, we're running out of time. I got 2 more questions for you. Right? This idea of becoming, right? I mean, that's the whole tension episode today, right? But, like, it is an ing. Yes. I mean, you see it on the front end. We're constantly becoming. Right? I mean, it's like every day. Again, I'd love to say it's always a positive, but positive, negative, neutral, whatever it may be, it's always happening. Like, and hearing some of the stories in the 2020, and I appreciate you going even further back in some of those stories, but, like, who is Patrick becoming today?
Oh, gosh. Man, I think, Travis, that's part of the beauty of this tension is you don't really know. But you have an idea. It's kind of like a road you've driven before. You know your way, but you're still paying attention. But there's a little bit of fog. And so, like, that turn's coming up in the road, but I'm not, driving with my eyes closed. Even if there was no fog, I wouldn't do that. And so I don't know that you really know, but you have a pretty good idea. I'll use another example. I got to go to Idaho here in like a week, 21-hour drive. I've never driven to Idaho. Well, I know I got to go north and a little west, right? That's probably not going to get me where I need to go, but it's going to get me in the right part of the United States. And that is, I think, part of this journey is you have a direction and you have this end destination, but you might not necessarily be able to define it because you've never been there before.
Come on. Yes.
And you work towards those things. And one of the things I think is like, we talk about dreams, and right, we have this coworker who talks about how, hey, dreams, they look different. They take longer. They're way harder, but they're so much better when you get there. Yeah. And so I think if you're looking at people that you want to model these things after, you model them, you don't copy them. Because if you copy them, you're going to get there and it's their version of it.
Come on.
It's not your version of it. And so you have these dreams that you model after. And so for Patrick, I don't exactly know because I've never been there, but some of the things I can look at is, man, I can look at the way my parents parented me, right? And I can lean into some of that. I can look at people in my community that talk about maybe some things that, like, they didn't like from their parents, and we can learn from that. I can look at the way my brother loves his wife well, having a 3-year-old, my niece Summer. I call her the tyrant because she rules the family, right? Summer wants to go on a 4-wheeler ride.
I got 3 of them at home. I know.
Yeah, I'm preaching to the choir here, but like, man, how does he love his wife who serves and is in the household washing his feet daily with what she does and raising those 2 kids. Yeah. And so I think for me, it's, I'm not a father yet, but man, I'd love that. And so what kind of father do I want to be? What kind of leader do I want to be in the church? And who have I seen do this well? I just finished this journey of physical fitness, of saying, okay, I kind of need to stop slacking. And so what does that look like? And how do I pursue that really hard? How do I continue growing in my faith? How do I, take this toddler marriage from crawling around on diapers to walking all over the house, right? Where do you put up, Travis, what are the things that like keep your babies from opening cabinets, right? Like where
You got to baby proof that stuff.
Yeah. Where do you baby proof your marriage? Because you're 2 years in. And those are the different journeys I'm on. I can't tell you what's going to look like because I've never been there.
God, that is so good. So I'm going to give you 30 seconds, Patrick. We got to close the episode. Yes. Give a call to the action, the listener out there. They're like, Patrick, that was beautiful. I'm crying on who you want to be. But tell me, the listener, give me something to go out there and go do as I'm on my own path to becoming and challenging myself in this tension.
If you're saying, man, I want to dive into this, I would find 1 or 2 or 3 people who intimidate you. Man, the individual I found early in Austin when I was hustling in business, he intimidated me with his discipline and the way he was pursuing his faith and the way he was growing in business. And we would talk to each other. We'd ask each other questions. We'd challenge each other. We weren't as concerned with did we like each other. We were really concerned with were we growing each other. And in Atlanta, the individual that I started turning over rocks with, man, he intimidated me with his knowledge of scripture and his disciplines and his scripture memorization. And I said, this is something I need in my life. And this is the journey I want to go on. Do you want to come with me? But he intimidated me, grew into a beautiful friendship. Turns out we have a common love for ice cream. And so that's one of the things, we'd flip rocks and we'd eat ice cream. And that was part of it. And so I would find people that intimidate you. And then if you journal daily, awesome, journal daily, create time to review. Yes. If you don't journal daily, you still need that time to review and to think back, because as you're flipping rocks, you're having these miniature aha moments, right? But if you don't take the time to remind yourself of the journey you're on, then it can be really dark. It can be really depressing. And your journey, right? If you're in a season of hard or you're in a season of joy, your journey will end. The Lord left the Israelites in Egypt for hundreds of years, and he brought them out. And then he left them in the wilderness, and then he brought them out. And so the journey you're in will end. And if it's a really great journey, enjoy it, because it might not be the next season of greatness. And if it's a really hard journey, I don't know that you enjoy the suffering, but you can look forward with hope and thanksgiving that eventually that journey will end. And so you have to take time in the good and the bad to reflect. Otherwise, you get to the end of it, and it's like, what was the point?
That's right.
It's like, Travis, I know you love the mountains. You shouldn't drive, the entire stretch of the Rockies with a blindfold on, because then you miss the entire journey. It's like, yeah, you got to Canada, but you missed all the stuff along the way.
Yeah.
And what are we doing?
Come on. Patrick, thank you so much. Tackling the tension of who you're becoming, not an easy one to talk about. It takes a amazing amount of self-reflectiveness that you clearly have, but also, man, your vulnerability. Thank you for sharing. The takeaways are galore today. So many things I've learned that I'm going to implement. Patrick, thanks for being on the podcast.